This one's pretty easy. If the fraction is already listed out of 100, then you just have to write down the numerator and put a percent symbol behind it. So if it's already out of 100, and then it's just the numerator. So that's all you would do if the fraction was out of 100. So essentially what you're going to do is you could get the fraction to a number out of 100, or you can use one of these methods. So page 190, number 1, we have 4/7, and I can multiply it times 100%, which essentially is the same as multiplying it times the fraction 100 over 1. So that would be 400 over 7, and then I would change it to a mixed number, which would be dividing about 400 by 7. Do it on your calculator if you'd like. So when you do it on your calculator, you're going to get some decimal. So then take the whole number that you get, 57 times 7. You should get 359 with the remainder of 1. So you'd have 57 and 1/7. And then don't forget to put your percent because we're changing it from a fraction to a percent. Okay, some of you might prefer this. It's really just doing one step before the other. So instead of multiplying by 100% first, I would divide the fraction first and then multiply by 100. So really it's just flipping the steps. Okay, so if I had 4/7, I would do 4 divided by 7, which I'd have to put a decimal point or in the remainder. So this would be a 0 here. So I'd have 5 and then 7. So I'd end up with the same numbers here and with 1 remaining. So this is the part where this one would get tricky because you have 1/7, but we can't have part of a decimal already, really. So when I multiply by 100, it fixes it because I moved my decimal point really to there. So it's 57 for a whole number and 1/7 for my part remaining. And I put it as a percent. So these are the same process, really. It's just changing the order of the steps. So I'd multiply, then divide. Here I divide, then multiply. Okay, so we're going to do number 4 on page 190. So you're going to change 1 7/8 into a percent. So to avoid having to think about probably a decimal and a fraction together, I'm going to have you multiply and then divide. So we're going to use method 1. Okay. Sometimes your fraction cannot multiply evenly to get to 100 and just to change it to a numerator out of 100. So that's why you have to learn this process as well. But if it was like a numerator out of 25, you just multiply both of them by 4. Okay, so first I need to change this to an improper fraction, or I can split these like a number bond. I should know that 1 times 100 to get to a percent be 100%. So then I'm done with my 1. So now I really only have to deal with my 7/8. And I need to write it as a percent still. So I need to take 7/8 times 100% still. So I'm going to do 7/8, 7. So it'll look like this, 7/8 times 100 over 1. So I end up with 700 over 8. So I'm going to do 700 divided by 8. get 87.5. So this would be 87.5%. So when you have an improper fraction, or sorry, mixed number, you can always break off the whole number and put it as a percent first. So 1 times 100 is 100. If it was 3, you do 3 times 100 and get 300%. So right here, I have this part on. This is the 7/8. What do I still need to add on? So I'm missing some part right here. So I solved for the 7/8, but I still need to bring back my 100%. So I need to add 100 plus my 87.5% and get 187.5%. Okay, and then the final two will be taking a decimal to a percent and a percent to fractions, which again, you already did on the very front. So your first step in taking a decimal to a percent, which if you look at the front, when we went decimal to a percent, we just multiplied the decimal times 100. Okay, so method 1 could be, we'll do this one first, multiply by 100. So 191, number 7 is 98 hundredths. So I just need to multiply that times 100%, which is the same as multiplying it times 100. So I move it 10 times 10, so I get 98%. If that for some reason is confusing to you, you can do method 1, which is converting it first to a fraction. So I would write 98 hundredths equals 98 over 100 equals, then I use the previous page that we worked on where I convert that to a percent, which I just take the numerator when it's over 100 and write it as a percent. Okay. So same thing, if I had 6/10, I just multiply it times 10 times 10, put a placeholder 0, which then when I simplify it, I don't technically need the placeholder 0, or you can convert it to a fraction. And really when we make it a percent, we want it as a fraction out of 100, because if I put this right now, this isn't out of 100. So if I put 6%, that's actually wrong, because right now this is 6/10. If I put this out of 100, I have to multiply both numbers times 10, and that would be 60, because 6 times 10 is 60, and 10 times 10 is 100. So this would be 60%, which is the same as this. And then percents to fractions. So if I have 33 1/3%, okay, this is going to be very similar to what we did here, just the opposite, because here we did fraction to a percent, and now we're doing percent difference. So, but first we need to make it an improper fraction. So we take 33 times 3, which is 99, plus 1. So 100 over 3. Okay. Then you need to divide it by 100 to convert it to a fraction. So that may seem silly because you're like, it's already a fraction, but this is the improper fraction. And remember when we did over here percents to a fraction, we put it as a percent out of 100. So right now, I just have my fraction, but I haven't put it out of 100 yet. So percent out of 100. So right now, I just have my fraction. I'm putting that, and I'm dividing it by 100. So this looks funny in your brain. So you can rewrite it like this if it helps you make sense of it. I have 100 over 3 divided by the 100%. So you're dividing it by 100 over 1. Okay, now we have to do keep, change, flip. So I would do 100 over 3. Then I change the operation just because I'm dividing by a fraction, so I have to multiply by the reciprocal. So times 1 over 100. Well, lucky for us, the 100 and the 100 can divide by each other, so they cancel out. And I'm left with 1 over 3. So 33 1/3% is actually 1/3 as a fraction. Okay, if I think about that, if I got 33 1/3 points out of 100 points possible in a test, I would get 33 1/3%. This would reduce to, I got 1/3 of the total points. So if it's confusing for you to think about why that 33 1/3% is what it is and why it's this fraction, think of it this way. You got 33 1/3 points out of the 100 possible. So you got 1/3 of the total points, which is equal to 33 1/3%. Hopefully that doesn't happen. So let's practice on page 191, number 9. It says 83 1/3%. So we know that this fraction will be less than what's equal to a whole number. So I should have less than a whole number for my fraction. Okay, so remember, convert to an improper fraction. So 83 times 3 plus 1 is 250. Over 3. And then I have to put that over or divide by 100. And I can rewrite it for my brain as I would see it in my fraction chapter, like that, which is then equal to keep, change, flip. So keep, change, flip. I can simplify, I can divide both of these by 50. So this would be 2. And then this would be 5. So 5 times 1 is 5. 3 times 2 is 6. So my fraction is 5/6. Essentially, that's all the different ways that you could do what we did on the front side. So we did some easier problems on the front, but if you end up with a mixed number and you need to change it to a decimal, percent, or a ratio, you can do that using the methods that I showed you. Okay, you can start your practice, but then make sure you come ask your teacher if you need help. And remember, percents can be converted into all these different things, and that math is the language of science, and science involves God's created world. And it remains constant because God is faithful to uphold all things.